Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I am actually doing the video about the California teacher, and he's gaining support. And I believe a lot of the teachers that know his struggle, they know, teachers who know what it's like teaching in middle school and high school, know what this man probably endured that led up to this. And you can see more video now showing the kid actually taking swings at the teacher. So this teacher basically, if you look at the video, you can see where he is showing this kid, look, I'm not going to let you pound on me and beat up on me and abuse me. You abuse me enough verbally, and who knows what else. Let's just be real about this. There's a lot more to this story than just this one incident. There were a lot of things that were going on in this classroom that led up to this point. And so this teacher, he might have even took threats from that particular student. And I believe that's not the only student that gave him a problem in that classroom. And I'm saying this because I know those classrooms are not easy to work in when you have teenagers that won't listen. They talk back and they talk to you as if you're at their level. And you'll have some of these teenagers that will threaten you. They'll come to school with weapons, or they'll threaten to bring weapons on the campus and do bodily harm to you or another student. And so I'm just being honest. I'm not even going to hide anymore what's going on in these California schools, that some of these teachers are not getting enough support. They'll put a lot of kids in a classroom with one teacher and expect that teacher to classroom of 30, 35, and who knows, some schools will try to squeeze kids in there, because each kid that shows up, the school gets money. So they lose money when kids don't show up to school. So a lot of times you'll have kids that have behavior problems, and they'll allow that kid to continue coming to the school, even though that kid is really allowing that kid to come to school. And you can see the video here, and you can see the kid. You see more of the video where the kid is actually coming against, trying to pretty much draw fists at the teacher. And so they showed a little bit more. This video actually shows more than the first video. And see, that's why you have to be careful with this, because a lot of times they don't show you what happened prior that led up to these incidents, especially in the classroom of high school. Here in California, these high schools are no joke. They put you in a classroom, and these kids, they will cuss you. They'll cuss you out. So let's hear what they have to say here.
Because of what happened. Starting video here, the Friday afternoon fight involved 64-year-old music teacher Marston Riley and a 14-year-old student. That student taken to a hospital with minor injuries. He was later released. The teacher, Mr. Riley, posted bond over the weekend after that arrest. Students in a class say that the argument that led to the fistfight was over school dress code. It obviously escalated to the student. Some think that the teacher was just defending himself. Others have said that that teacher is known for being aggressive. The fight remains under investigation by the LA County Sheriff's Department. Meanwhile, the principal here at Maywood Academy High, he sent a letter to parents saying that the crisis counselors will be available here this morning for any students that need to discuss what happened, especially with that video being so widely seen on social media and the news. That's teacher, by the way, the music teacher, Mr. Riley, he is due for his arraignment in court later this month, November 30th.
Okay, so there you have it. Now I'm going to turn it down. That's unrelated right there. But I just wanted to say, now I said I'd done a video about this before, and I said that I felt that that teacher needed to resign and he needed to move on and get into something else, so that, you know, if he felt like this field was too much, that maybe he should. Sometimes when you're in these classrooms, they will push your buttons. They, as in the kids, sometimes will push your buttons. And so they keep replaying the video over, and you can see a little bit more where you can see the kid actually look like he's holding up his fist, and he's, you know, he's trying to fight that teacher, you know. So, and then he used the racial slurs, which they didn't want to even air it because it was so offensive. Let me tell you something. Too, you have in a lot of these schools, you have a larger population of Hispanic and Latin kids. Now, some of the teachers, I've noticed there's not as many African American teachers in some of these schools. There have been some instances where teachers or people who are African American, who are who are wanting to become teachers, are not hired. You know, even if they complete their program, get a credential, sometimes they won't hire. They hire now. I know a school where they only hire Hispanic teachers. They'll only hire the Hispanic teachers, and they won't hire any Black teachers. And that has happened a lot in Pasadena, and I'm going to say that it's happened a lot in Pasadena. The only teachers you see as teachers, they're aides, and a lot of times the treatment is not very good. There's a lot of racial division, and I'm going to say this: it happens in Pasadena. It's happened in some of these California schools, and so racially charged. So teachers that are in these schools, when you do get positions, they're up against parents who they want an interpreter. Sometimes they don't have trust in because you're another race. They form stereotypes about you, and so a lot of kids will come to school with things that are very racially charged, and so teaching in a population with all of that going on. So the administrative can be sometimes biased. They won't come out and say, we're in a time where people won't say things necessarily. Some will, some won't. Some won't say. It's what they do in their actions that speak louder than their words sometimes. Some people will bluntly, you know, just say things that are racially charged. People will hide it, and they'll try to pretend like they're accepting of you. They'll have like a couple of African American instructors there, but the treatment may not be that great. And so you're going to get treated some type of way that is not fair. And so there has been an ethnic cleansing in a lot of these schools. Now, for those schools that have a higher population of African-American instructors, what ends up happening at those schools, you still have the issues with the kids coming from different backgrounds. Some kids come from relatively good homes, and then others will come from broken homes. And whatever their problems are at home, they bring that whatever's on the street in the neighborhood or at home, they bring it to the campus. And so that's what you're left with. And a lot of times you're dealing with the middle school and the high school ages are very difficult time in ages of kids to work with, because you'll have some kids that are, you know, they want to come to school, they want to learn, and you'll have some kids who are there because there's a court order says they got to be in school, that they can't be out of school and they can't be at home. And if they're not in school, they'll, you know, they're breaking probation, because there's some kids that are coming from troubled backgrounds. They've already got a history of being suspended or in trouble with the law. So you may be dealing with some kids like that. You may be dealing with kids who, even if they're not a behavior issue, they already kind of know, you know, the streets. They know, you know, they know what to say, what not to say, how to, you know, call you out on your race or your even your sexuality, call you out if you're a woman or a male, you know, talk about you, you know, and push your buttons. And a lot of times you'll have, sometimes you will have a very, very minimum of support. A lot of times you don't have as much support. Sometimes it depends. They have to do what they call an investigation on issues like that. Now you'll have some parents dividing this, because there's some parents, no matter what their kids does, even if the kid is doing something wrong, cussing the teacher out, calling them the N-word every day and saying maybe worse words than that, calling them out on their race. You could have the parent saying those things at home, and the kid repeats it. They've grown up on it. They've seen them talking about black in a certain type of way. So the kid at school does the same thing. They're supposed to sit there and accept that, you know. These are the type of things that some teachers have gone through. Then you'll have behavior problems from kids, and the teacher will try to reach out to the parent won't respond, or that kid does no wrong, even though the kid has got a history of behavior issues. That parent will, regardless of that kid having the behavior issues that they do, they support the kid instead of the teacher, and trying to work with the teacher on trying to correct or redirect a negative behavior. With this kind of stuff right here, this looks to be something that was building up. It wasn't at random. Now, they did say that this teacher had a history of being aggressive as well. You do have some teachers that can be extremely over the top aggressive, but a lot of that may come with the population they're working with as well. So they may be working with a difficult population of kids, where you'll have some kids that come from broken backgrounds, or they come from the street lingo, or they come from gangs, or they had siblings that were in gangs. So you coming in there and being this sweet little teacher, real passive, is not going to work for some kids that they've already had sex, they've already gotten in trouble with the law, they already know, you know, the ins and outs of, you know, who got shot down the street, you know, who stole Jimmy's car, you know, all that kind of stuff. Some of these kids are not what you take them for. They already kind of are on it. You know, they already know, you know, they have access to the internet and all kinds of it's not peer pressure anymore. It's influences that they're already engaged in. And so you can't be this little sweet grade school teacher that was back in the days. You're dealing with a group of kids. This generation's a little bit more tuned with what's going on. They know it before you know it, so to speak. You know, they're not what you think. They're not these little sweet little angels sitting behind the desk and with their hand raised, waiting to respond and listening to everything and hinging on every word you say. A lot of times you'll have some kids that are in there with behavior issues. They're talking while the teacher is talking over the teacher. Sometimes they'll ignite fights with other students. They'll be talking about things that they're going to get into gonna hurt. And so a lot of times they won't tell you the other side of the ugly side of what you have to deal with being a teacher. So it isn't easy. So a lot of times you'll have situations where people won't be honest. They come out and say what the teachers going through from day in and day out in the classrooms. These classrooms are not easy to work in necessarily. And then you might have a classroom where the kids are easygoing, but the staff is a problem. The administrative staff is a problem, or they're loading you up with paperwork and loading you up with kids. And sometimes some of these rooms are overcrowded. They have too many kids and not enough staff. They have a lot of layoffs at some of these schools. They pink people because somebody did something wrong. It's always a budget issue. And so these are things that parents are not really hearing about, or they're not reading about. And if you have a classroom 35 kids and you're one teacher and you don't have any aid and no support, and then you have a group of 20 kids out of the 40 kids that are a behavior issue, what do you expect to happen after so many weeks and months of enduring, racial epithets, maybe sexual innuendos, maybe little breakout fights around in the classroom, brawls between students, and then what you see and hear, And I'm not saying that, I'm saying what I'm saying is there's a lot of different factors in this that people are not considering that happen in these classrooms. And a lot of times the parents don't even really know. They don't even know what's going on. And then sometimes parents know their kids. They know if their kid's a talker or a fighter or a biter or, somebody that will talk back, because they probably talk back to them, or they don't listen to them, or they do whatever they want. Or instead of being a parent, they're more like the friend of the child instead of the parent. And so some of that happens. And so there's a lot of things that go on. There's different things that go on with this age group. And so I'm telling you there's more to the story. Two, the support is not there anymore like it used to be. In most of these schools, there's a problem. There's a problem with LA Unified Schools. There's a problem with California schools, period. There's issues. If you just look up the lawsuits, sometimes it's lawsuits from parents. There's lawsuits from other agencies that find that there's somebody in these schools that are out of compliance with certain issues. There are budget issues, there's money issues, there's issues surrounding liability. There's overcrowding in some of these classrooms where you don't have enough staff to support teachers, so they expect you to teach and deal with behavior problems. And then on top of that, you have to do paperwork and be on time and do lesson plans and be concise with what you do. And some of these teachers end up staying over and not getting paid. They stay overtime. And so that's why you hear some teachers too complaining that they don't get a raise, or the cost of living, how it has gone up. The teachers are not getting compensated for what the cost of living is. So there's a lot of issues going on. You have some teachers that are wearing more than one hat. And that's to keep running, because they have a shortage of teachers or a shortage of staff. And then a lot of people don't want to teach anymore because they've gone through a lot of this, rigmarole with parents. Sometimes you'll have parents that the kid can do no wrong, even though they could have a kid that is in and out of trouble, that has had multiple suspensions or threats of suspension, or the kid is a constant behavior problem, and the parent is in either total denial or they just don't want to really intervene because they don't care, you know. And so they know that the kid is lighter, or the kid is you know, the type of kid that is disruptive in the room, will cuss out another, you know, cuss out another person or cuss out an adult and be disrespectful. And they know their kids, and then too, they know if their kids harbor racial, you know, racial prejudice, because they've learned it at home, because the parents are like, the parents won't come out and say that they're like that. And so the kid learns it and grows up and then exhibits what they've heard all their lives, you know. And so you have a population now that where there's probably a lot more Hispanic or Latin kids than there are African American kids in these schools. So here has been some tension between Latin people and African American people, and so you do have some parents who harbor prejudice. And so I've heard parents say, well, I don't want a black person teaching my kid. And so that kid hears that and learns that and goes to that school and exhibits that anger and that prejudice and that hatred. And so they inflict it on that African American teacher. And so that's why you have some teachers that will choose not to teach in an environment that is going to be a hotbed of trouble. And so too, you have some schools where there's you know, a prevalence of gang activity. And so it can be dangerous and problematic at some of these schools. It starts sometimes as early as elementary. And you'll have kids that'll even, you know, be in the bathroom experimenting with drugs and sex and things like that. And so a lot of this stuff doesn't get reported, or it's underreported. And, you know, you see what happened with Nicholas Cruz, you know, the kid that shot up the kids at the school. He had a laundry list of incidences where he was suspended. And if you don't believe me, okay, so Nicholas Cruz was regularly in trouble at school for years. And so I brought this up to as an example, so that you see that a lot of these schools, and this, even though this school is not a California school, most of these schools do the same thing here. Even in California, it's the same thing. So Nicholas Cruz was regularly in trouble at school for years. Disciplinary records show that. And so the same thing that happened in this Florida school happens here in the California schools. You'll have kids that they'll constantly be in trouble, constantly be in and out of, you know, detention and all that, or suspended, and nothing gets done about it. And even if the kid threatens, they're going to come to school and stab a teacher, or they're going to shoot a teacher. I've heard some kids say they're going to shoot a teacher, or they're going to stab. I've seen kids kick teachers, kick them in the stomach, things like that, and the teacher doesn't do anything about it, doesn't report it. And then later you have your Nicholas Cruz's. And so right here, as a young middle school student, see, it's middle school. The school shooter, Nicholas Cruz, regularly got in trouble for using foul language, insulting people, and disobeying teachers and disrupting classes. He's not the only one that's done this. There are other kids in other California schools that do the same thing, and worse. School officials met with his mother and counseled him and referred him to family counseling and gave him detention and suspended him. Okay. So, but the problems only escalated when Cruz got to Parkland's Marjory Stoneman Douglas High. Disciplinary records obtained by the South Florida Sun Sentinel show this. So in January of 2017, Cruz assaulted someone and received a one-day intervention. The school had a threat assessment on him, and the records indicate that. And so, basically, this is in short order saying that he had history of disciplinary problems. Now, a lot of times they cover this up with some kids because there's confidentiality. Only reason why they exposed this one is because he actually carried out his threats and then killed multiple children, students. And so I'm warning you right now, telling you that there are California schools that have plenty of Nikolas Cruzes in those schools. And they're underreported, they're overcrowded, and teachers don't have enough support. And it builds and builds and builds. And, yeah, sure, this teacher may have had a history, and I'm saying may because I don't know him and I wasn't there to see him and then see what he did, but it said that he had a history of being aggressive. But if you work in these schools, if you ever actually been in some of these schools and see what some of these teachers have to deal with, you are not going to go in there being passive and make it, because they will walk all over you and you won't even want to be there. There's subs that don't even want to teach at some of these schools when they see what they're dealing with. And so, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go, but I just wanted to let you know that Nikolas Cruz thing, when they made it seem like, oh, somebody should have did something and blah, blah, blah. He had a history. He had a history, and what they did is they failed. They failed to do anything about the situation, and it escalated into the deaths that now we're hearing about that are going to go down in history as a tragedy. And so the same thing that happened at this school is bound to happen again, is what I'm saying. I'm warning you. It's bound to happen again and again and again, because something is wrong with these schools where they're either underreporting things, or they're just putting a bunch of kids, what I call warehousing them. They warehouse kids. They put a bunch of kids in a classroom. You got one teacher, and that teacher is struggling, and they don't have enough support. And so you have these incidences that turn into like somebody losing a loss of lives, or somebody ending up getting incarcerated, such as this teacher did here. So with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. But some teachers have supported, they're divided on this issue. There's some parents that say, yeah, this kid should have been disciplined. They probably know there might have been a history with these kids or this kid. In the beginning when they showed the video, they showed the teacher, and it looked like the teacher was doing all of the drawing of the fist. But when you seen this other video, you could see clearly that this kid, he was ready for battle. He was drawing up his fist and everything, and he had used the racial slurs, and they didn't want to air that because they know that if people heard those slurs, there's things that you can say to people that will set them off, and you'll lose your sense of reality at that point when you hear certain things, especially if they're hot button charged racial slurs, especially if you're working in a school where you've got to listen to this all the time and you're expected to teach in that environment. And eventually you say enough is enough, and that's why I think that guy should have quit, he should have resigned, or he should have relocated somewhere else, because I feel like there might have been something that they're not telling everything yet. Because for that kid to say those racial slurs, you best believe he's not the only kid that has done it. There's other kids that have done it, and there's probably something in that school that's going on that's not good. That's not a healthy environment for people working. And so anyway, I'm going to let this video go, but we'll see what happens of this. What they've done is they created a GoFundMe account for this teacher, and that GoFundMe account is growing, and it's got some people upset, but then it's got a lot of other teachers who had personal experience in California supporting this teacher because they know what it's like to be in a classroom with a group of kids, and you find that some of these kids, they're undisciplined, and you do have some parents who just let the kids do whatever they want, talk to adults however they want, act however they want. If you call the parents and you can't even get their number, they give you a wrong number, or if you get them on the phone, they don't want to hear it. They turn it and flip around on the teacher. It's like the teacher's responsibility. It's you, it's not us, And so they want you to basically endure a lot of craziness in the classroom. And the administrative about it, you might be the one to get written up and what have you. But this guy, he should have let this class go. Should have let it go. I mean, what's the saying? They say, all money is money. All money is not good money. Well, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. What are your thoughts and feedback on this? Because eventually, they're going to find other classrooms where there's going to be other things that are going to happen like this. And it could be two students, or it could be staff members fighting. It could be a number of things that will end up happening. But anyway, thanks for listening. Well, this is